big sky, big potential. In association with Mills and Reeve, this is Eastern Promise. Achieving more together. Welcome to the podcast beloved of Magi from the East of England, that is. This week, we're shining a spotlight on the Yuletide work of charities across the region, for this is Eastern Promise. I'm your elf on the shelf, Mike Rigby, and this week I'm talking to a range of charities and non-profits working hard to make a difference this Christmas. From local groups to medical research, they are the heart and soul of the East of England. We'll also be looking back at the last 12 months of Eastern Promise and ahead to 2026. Ho ho, here we go! Time to see out the year with some festive audio fireworks, direct from the East of England on this week's Eastern Promise. Yes, as we drop the needle on some mellow Christmas classics and pour some mulled wine for maximum relaximum. We've had a huge range of charities join our Christmas Appeal open mic. And thanks to the wonder of the interweb, they came from the East. And we'll start with Tom Holmes of Norfolk's cancer charity, the Big C.
So my official job title is Events and Engagement Manager at Big C, but ultimately I look after everything fundraising related at the charity. So everything from the events that we organise ourselves through to supporting fundraisers that choose to do their own events for us, dealing with regular giving, legacies, and everything in between. That's the way it works in most charities. You know, we wear a lot of hats. Our big one is our Jingle Jangle Festive Fun Run. So it takes place at High Lodge down at Thetford Forest. Everybody that enters the run gets a wristband with bells on it. And the idea is that as you run through the forest, it creates kind of the magical sound of the bells jingling through the forest. So that one you do need to book in advance. Tickets are available on our website to book that. It is purely a fun run. There's no kind of chip timing or trying to set world records. It's family friendly. There's a 5-kilometre route and a 2.5-kilometre route. You can run it, you can walk it. It's just a good opportunity to get out in the fresh air, hopefully on a beautiful, crisp winter's morning, and raise some money for Big C. Yeah, if you can't attend any of our events in person, we have also got an online Christmas prize draw. So we've been very kindly donated some incredible prizes, including a watch, a Gerald's hamper, a voucher for the spa at Park Farm in Heatherset, and a signed Norwich City football. They're all available. If you go through our website, you can find how to buy tickets in the raffle to win some of those amazing prizes.
Thank you, Tom. The Big C does some wonderful work in terms of both research and cancer care. And now, stand by for a very personal message from Matt Hughes from the MedCan Foundation.
So my son, Charlie, he was diagnosed at 10 weeks old with drug-resistant epilepsy. So this little awareness is about that 30% of all epilepsies are resistant to medications. So at that point, he was suffering over 120 seizures per day. And as a result, he has global development delay. So he's unable to talk, he can't walk, he's incontinent, we have to feed him. So he's effectively still a baby, albeit that he's 8 years old. So he goes to the Clare School, who are amazing, especially school in Norwich. But yeah, basically the NHS, which got an amazing team around him, but they said, look, we've tried everything that's available. There's nothing more we can do for him. So Charlie was left basically suffering all these seizures. So I started researching and looking about to see if there's any other options, maybe taking him abroad and seeing if there's, any therapies abroad that could help him. And whilst I was doing my research, I kept coming across cannabinoid treatments, which were not available in the UK at that point. And then sadly, a good friend of mine, Hannah Deacon, she passed away earlier this year. She had the fight for her son in a very similar circumstance, that there was nothing more that could be done. And the treatments, he was on very high doses of steroids, which would eventually shut down his organs. So she took him to Holland and they tried cannabinoid treatments over there and he became seizure free. So she started fighting for access here in the UK and had huge public support and government backing. And in 2018, they changed the law allowed cannabinoid therapies. So Charlie was then privately prescribed in May 2018, and within a couple of months we saw an 85% reduction in seizures. And both me and Hannah felt that the information as a parent, we felt very isolated because you go to epilepsy charities and the information is about drugs that our children have already failed, or brain surgeries, or ketogenic diets, things like that. So the information out there to look at other therapies, novel therapies, just wasn't there. And you want accurate information, especially when your child's so chronically ill. So we formed MedCan effectively to fill that gap. And we now work internationally with organisations predominantly on cannabinoid therapies. So we are now looking to run an RCT. So Charlie has been prescribed this privately for the past 8 years, more or less, and it's still not available on the NHS. So a large part of what we're working with parliamentarians and researchers and universities, etc., and internationally as well, to try and get these treatments available through the NHS. But in the meantime, a large part of our work is actually highlighting the 30% of epilepsies, especially the severe drug-resistant epilepsies, because again, the awareness isn't there. And the 30% figure has never changed in 50 years. So what we're a large part is trying to push government and epilepsy charities, etc., to raise the profile of the 30%. And if we look at government research funding as well towards these diseases, it works out at £21 per head, whereas say Parkinson's, Alzheimer's or motor neuron disease, you're looking at over £200 per head. So the research funding just isn't there and the research isn't happening. And it's devastating lives. So not only is it impacting obviously the lives of the children, but the wider family as well. It's the parents, the rate of anxiety, depression, PTSD is extremely high in family caring for children with these conditions. So it's a wider issue, but no one's talking about it. So our job is to change that. Yeah, we've recently launched a new film, short film, 5-minute film. We pushed that across social media. This was at the beginning of this month. We reached over 1.2 million people with the film. We had a parliamentary event as well, and we had a good attendance from MPs. So we're going to be doing more around that in the new year. And as I say, we're looking to launch an RCT in cannabinoid therapies and personalised treatments, which is something none of us have got any experience in doing. But again, it's awareness projects. We're working very closely with the epilepsy charities, national epilepsy charities, and trying to widen awareness. But I think in Norfolk, again, as a charity, we are quite niche. Trying to get the funding is really difficult. But we all work full time. We have lives going on. So it's trying to get outside the bubble. And then my friend Gemma tagged you, so maybe it's a good way of just reaching the local community and highlighting it. We are a Norwich charity, albeit we work nationally and internationally. We are based in Norwich.
The resilience and tenacity of parents such as Matt is always a humbling thing for me to behold. Thank you, Matt, for sharing your family's story with us. And all the best for you and for the MedCan Foundation for Christmas and 2026. And thank you to everyone who's dialed in to share news of their Christmas appeals. You can find links to all the charities mentioned, both this week and last week, in the notes to this podcast. And now, this. This is our last podcast of 2025. We'll be back in January. Oh, what? And as we stand by to greet 2026, I thought it would be fun to look back at some of your favourites and mine from the Eastern Promise podcast in 2025. In January, we held our third round table under the mighty banner of How the Brex Can Support the Growth of Cambridge. The Brex, for those unfamiliar with their austere beauty, span an area of 393 square miles or 1,019 square kilometres across Norfolk and Suffolk, comprising Thetford Forest and acres of heathland, sitting roughly equidistant between Norwich and Cambridge, and has the rail line and dualled road network between those two cities running more or less parallel throughout Breckland district. Breckland is also where I live, and having been seized of the potential for growth and the size of the opportunity here, I wanted cooler, wiser and more experienced heads to join me in considering what that might, and indeed should, look like. First, let's hear from Breckland Council's Deputy Leader and Executive Member for Housing and Planning, as well as my own local councillor, Sarah Suggett.
Sarah, what are the challenges for a council forming an economic and a housing policy around an area that's not in your control?
There's quite a few, to be honest. Where we do have some of those major infrastructure pieces like railway lines, obviously that can allow us to bring certain types of economic growth in, but obviously it's the skill set that we need from our residents to be able to work in such places. Somewhere like Thetford, for example, it's recognised Thetford is one of the most deprived areas in the country, but people still aspire to live in Thetford. It's a beautiful place. We're just on the edge of Thetford Forest. There's a lot going on for Thetford, but as the district council, we can't do that all on our own. We need to work with partners, other organisations, other agencies to help bring that together. Talking about things around the rail, working with the likes of Greater Anglia, it's not as easy as one would like to hope that it could be, but we need those guys on board to be able to, I suppose, get across what the potential is in places like that. We struggle with further education, so our children, we can educate them quite well up to a high school level. We can kind of tick the box from a college level, but actually we go beyond that and we're really struggling. So we're sending a lot of our young people away on the hope that they'll come back one day, but actually they come back often once they've had their family come back to town. We've got a really elderly population, so it's a real difficult balance around youngsters, elderly people, the skill set, the infrastructure, and it is a challenge that we can't do. We can't face that on our own.
Councillor Sarah Suggett. There are few voices I've encountered as wise and patient on this matter as Mills and Reeves planning law mastermind and advocate of stewardship and patients capital, Anna Aldous. Here she is in that same session, offering further food for thought.
We've had some really positive things. My headline takeaway would be number one, investment. I think Sarah made a really powerful point. Everybody's got great ideas. 99.9% of them rely on money. I think any kind of development is going to be infrastructure-led. Again, that comes back to money. But I also think the most successful developments are the ones which listen to communities from the outset, but they deliver early to those communities from the outset. So you made the point that you build houses and you put people in these spaces, but if there is no curation of place, there is no kind of nurturing and enablement of that community. And actually, I think we do a disservice to the potential of the area without doing that.
Anna Aldous. In February, the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority very kindly helped me organise a raft of interviews in the west of our region, looking at both the social capital support available from the CPCA and an introduction to the new kid on the higher education block, ARU Peterborough. Here's Vice-Chancellor of the same, Professor Ross Renton, characteristically clear-eyed on the task before him.
Look, awards are wonderful, and it's good for staff and it's good for the students that are on campus and also for our partners. I care about the outcomes. I genuinely do. I spent one of the days last week with a group of our students just hearing feedback from them, where they're gaining in terms of their education, what their aspirations in terms of employment might be. We've got graduation coming up in a few weeks' time, going across the stage in Peterborough Cathedral. That's the bit. Wow. That's the bit that gets me really excited. You know, seeing our students coming from in the door to out the door and into something that will just change them and their families' lives.
I met Chair of the Cambridge Growth Company and of Homes England, Peter Freeman, at UKREiiF 2024, when he was a guest on a panel chaired by me. And in March 2025, I caught up with Peter to record an interview that is one of the 3 most listened to and downloaded podcasts Eastern Promise has put out ever.
I think innately I like to ask a lot of questions, just kind of natural curiosity. And although I kind of start jumping to conclusions quite quickly, I treat them all as preliminary conclusions, working hypotheses, and I go on asking questions and I go on revising my opinions. And apart from the fact that there are 4 levels of elected local leaders here, the mayor, the county, the city and South Cambridgeshire, who know the patch and their job and their voters and their needs much more than I ever will. So, you know, it would be an appalling discourtesy not to want to listen to them. They are the people who can probably tell me best, not just what they'd like, but what is needed and what is practical.
Peter Freeman. We jump forward now to my all-too-brief interview with board members from the Norwich Financial Industry Group and its chair, Steve Davidson. Recorded at the group's AGM in the Aviva Marble Hall, Norwich's long track record as a centre for the financial sector, particularly in insurance, is something I'm aiming to bring further into the spotlight in 2026. Until then, here's Steve!
Yeah, well, I think tonight, Mike, is about actually making the connections as well with this cluster of businesses that are in our local area. I mean, FIG is all about making sure we've got a thriving financial and professional services sector, and this is just one way of showing that. And you can see by the amount of people who've come tonight.
I was going to say, it is buzzing, and it's not just, you know, financial types. Yeah, not that I would be able to spot a financial type, but there's local government officers, all manner of this. We've got lawyers, obviously, very important.
Well, the key thing is, that is correct, but what it is, figures about businesses, accountants, lawyers, insurance people, etc., but also academics, Norwich University of the Arts, UEA, etc., and also about public sector, so local government. So it's that triangle that makes it so powerful.
Steve Davidson. You're bound to be going to Leeds in May, Leeds in May, Leeds in May. Yes, because it was time, once again, for the UK Real Estate Infrastructure and Investment Forum. There's a lot of action from the east of England I could pick to illustrate this event. However, a personal favourite of mine next, from the Cambridge-Manchester Partnership Panel on Day 2, featuring Innovate Cambridge Executive Director Catherine Chapman and first, Chair of AstraZeneca UK, Sean Grady.
people have said from time to time, you just had a brilliant onboarding strategy coming to Cambridge, to which the reply is, you flatter us by thinking there was a strategy, Because actually what we did was just very Cambridge-like. We just rocked up. And we just went to things and had something interesting to say. It was quite interesting, actually, when we first started to come to Cambridge, because everybody had heard about AstraZeneca and everybody was talking about AstraZeneca, and Pfizer was trying to buy AstraZeneca at the time, you might remember. So a few of us got down early because we were partnering people, and then you'd go to a reception and you'd say, I'm from AstraZeneca, and people would literally grab you by the arm and say, don't move, I need to find Hillary or Josephine or whatever. It was like whale watching, I've actually seen somebody from AstraZeneca. So it was a very natural sort of evolutionary thing. Back to football, if I may, very quickly. As part of arriving in Cambridge, we did get close to the football club, because it's one thing to meet people from the university and all the clever people, but you don't actually very often come across real people. So we aligned to Cambridge United Football Club, and I ended up being the chairman. How did that happen? But we created a programme called Active Science. So when Cambridge United are going out to schools doing football and netball and all of that, there is now a science programme in the schools outreach programme, which we've been doing for 7 or 8 years. And then our colleagues in Macclesfield said, so how come we haven't got one of those? So we now have that with Macclesfield Football Club, with my close friend Robbie Savage, would you believe? And we've done it at Everton as well, because we've got a site in Liverpool. So this sort of school STEM programme that came from us moving to Cambridge is now in Mactown and in Everton, and Lou has promised me it will be in Manchester United or Manchester City for the start of next season. So.
And I would like to say something. I think the rest of us are real people that accidentally ended up in the university environment.
I'll be the judge of that.
Catherine Chapman and Sean Grady. And as May gives way to June, all eyes turn to the Norfolk Showground and the Royal Norfolk Show. Again, there's no shortage of highlights here, but for sheer holiness, and no, I don't mean laddered tights, here's His Grace the Lord Bishop of Norwich, perusing the stands in the STEMM village, as he's accosted by me and my occasional co-host and contributor, the wonderful Dr. Penny Hundleby of the John Innes Centre.
Well, Penny, this is a fantastic start to the Royal Norfolk Show 2025. We're here with His Grace, the Bishop of Norwich. How are you finding the show already this morning?
Well, I was here quite early and it's already really busy, and I think it's only about 10:30 in the morning. But what I'm loving seeing is all the faces of the children here in the STEM area, just delighting in learning new things and engaging with science and the latest innovations of potential jobs in the future, and we're here learning about wind farming at the moment, and it's just an incredible place to be, and the Royal Norfolk Show is just such a highlight in the calendar of Norfolk's year.
Have a wonderful time at the show.
And you. So what's been your favourite part so far?
Honestly, just getting here, we've just got breakfast.
Well, let me give you a top tip. The Church of England has a tent here, the chaplaincy tent, and they're making fresh candy floss and handing it out, so you might want to nip up there. I think it was bright green candy floss when I had a go earlier.
Penny Hundleby and the Bishop of Norwich. The boys of summer may have gone, but the excitement of autumn was still to come, notably a mammoth tour around the John Innes Centre, really a titan in our midst, feeding people, protecting crops and saving lives worldwide. My guide is once again Dr. Penny Hundleby. But weirdly enough, the clip I'm bringing you is not about plants at all. It's about bugs, as Penny and I find ourselves with Sam Mugford and Victor Soria Carrasco deep in the John Innes Insectary.
don't think it would be of interest for you, but then we have also strict regulations in terms of how we deal with the waste. We have to freeze everything, then we have to clean with a washer at a certain temperature, and then everything that leaves this facility is also autoclaved afterwards.
Right, so frozen then burnt.
So the principle is anything that comes alive, but only humans live alive.
Mostly, usually.
So we keep each colony of insects enclosed in a cage like this. And here we've got Mysis persicae. This is the green peach aphid.
Ah, yes.
And you can just about see, there's a few specks. You can see that dead leaf, which is covered in some alive aphids. So they reproduce incredibly quickly. I don't know if you know about their reproduction, but aphids have a fantastic life cycle. They're mostly asexual. So they give birth, their population is completely female. They give birth to live young, like us, not like most insects that lay eggs.
Really?
The live young are clones of the mother, genetically identical, made from unfertilized embryos. So they're identical. They're born, because they don't need to have sex, they're born pregnant with embryos that are also pregnant of themselves. Which means they can reproduce incredibly fast. And that's why when the weather is getting warmer like it is now outside, you'll see these colonies of aphids appear and grow incredibly quickly, and that's what makes them such powerful crop pests.
Penny Hundleby, Victor Soria Carrasco and Sam Mugford. You may now all stop scratching. Jumping ahead to November, we put on our mammoth live event at Mills & Reeve's Cambridge offices, looking at skills, careers and the policy framework scaffolding them all. First, we heard from talented young people across the region and asked them what they wanted from their future careers. A panel of adults in education and skills responded, and then we asked our young guests if what they'd heard encouraged them. Here's East Norfolk sixth form student May Munro to share her thoughts.
I thought it was really interesting when you said about reindustrialising ports and stuff, because I do think that not everyone is interested in like tertiary and quaternary more sectors, which is like service industry and technology, and I feel like that might be like part of the reason why like there's like that like lack of like the bridge between like education and then like jobs, because some like young like boys like go into more of a physical job and then like don't have anywhere really like that they can get into like a good well-paying job with that physical like crafts
hands-on trades.
So that's what I think, that's a good idea.
May Munro. Next we looked at career breaks and pivots, especially where these were not by choice. Three exceptional women, Deborah Dawson, Victoria Higgins and Sally Field, shared their stories of resilience, hope, sadness and laughter as the nature of the squiggly career came to light. C-suite recruitment guru Tarquin Bennett-Coles, a fellow ally, stopped me in mid-flow, earning him not only a round of applause from a grateful audience, but also the opportunity to make this vital point.
Again, in advance of this, I wanted to look at some of the things that men have said about women. So in 2020, around the COVID time, the government contacted a whole load of companies with CEOs, board directors, and said, you know, what are your thoughts about getting more women into the C-suite? And I'm just going to read you a couple of these because I love these. So the first one is, I don't think women fit into our organisation and team. Most women don't want the hassle or the pressure. Is that true? And my favourite is, we already have one, thanks, so we're done.
Tarquin Bennett-Coles. And finally, friend of the show Dan Thorpe, CEO of Cambridge Ahead, spoke for all of us, not just his fellow panellists and policy experts, when he said this.
At the heart of this really is just some incredible people doing great things. Like you yourself, Mike, but everyone else, that you've put on the panel and that we've heard from, it is really striking how much difference people are making to this kind of issue that you've brought us all here together to talk about. So that's one thing. And then we're talking about the skills system, which in sort of my sort of policy world is such an unwieldy, complex, hard policy system and under-resourced to understand. If someone asked me to draw the planning system, I could have a good go at it, or the transport system I could. If someone asked me to draw the skills system, I couldn't do that. So I think it's a particularly complicated sort of system, but at odds with that, we've just got some brilliant people doing brilliant things. So the big thing that's been going through my head, and I realise this is quite sort of high ambition, is we should absolutely chip away at making the system better, and that Gareth is working with us a lot on that. But really what would make a difference is just finding a way to give more resource to those brilliant people doing good things. That would make an impact, I think. That's what strikes me.
Dan Thorpe. I am still incredibly proud of that event and the wonderful people who made it such a unique experience. Not 24 hours beforehand, I had forsworn all live events for evermore, and lo and behold, now people are asking for more. Are you one of these people? DM me at LinkedIn. Just put in Mike Rigby, disregard all the more handsome and talented Mike Rigbys, and then contact me. Or email me at podcast@easternpromise.org.uk. And what of the next 12 months, you ask? Well, kicking off 2026 are Dr. Andy Williams and Dan Thorpe, both of the Oxford-Cambridge Supercluster Board. They'll be bringing us bang up to date on the Ox-Cam corridor, the interplay of place, people and central government, East-West Rail, and the power of that corridor to engage with and empower clusters well beyond its boundaries. Here's a short snippet of Andy in full flow.
If you want to work with investors and global businesses and universities, what can we work on together? Rather than me trying to adapt everything I do to all these different documents, which are just so bloody complicated, you can't do it. But I will come back to one of the themes, and we were discussing before we started about, Devo deals for Norfolk and Suffolk, more local money held locally. And we've seen through something called the LIP, which you may not have seen, the Local Innovation Prosperity Fund, local authorities have to bid for that, and they're bidding competitively with other regions and other geographies. So for me, although we just talked about the importance of local decision-making and local knowledge, the thought there's going to be lots and lots more small parcels of money all saying how they're going to spend it and how business has to interact with them. I'm just going to go back and say business hasn't got time to do that. They need a single, consistent strategic story for the whole of the UK, because if you're a global organisation, you've got another 100 different countries to worry about. They're not going to spend their time marching around 15, 20 different authorities, when really what they're looking for is what Dan's already talked about and working on, is they work by capability. So one of your questions are, where should activities happen? Companies look for where the globally competitive activities are. Yeah. They're not interested in geography, particularly they see the UK as a single place.
Andy Williams. 7 days later, I'll be chatting with a phalanx of Norfolk's ambassadors, a group of entrepreneurs, innovators and business figures who've pledged their time, effort and enthusiasm to shouting about the county and sharing the good news far and wide. All power to their elbow, and it's all a bit like I'm doing now. I'll be asking them to share their love for Norfolk, what makes the role of an ambassador so important, and we'll all engage in some collective light myth-busting. And then we'll be premiering the Eastern Promise Beginner's Guides, our special feature exploring what new entrants need to get to grips with at least initially, four of the East of England's biggest ecosystems, starting with Norwich, featuring agri-science stalwart Dr. Vicky Foster, mentor, innovator and film producer Tom Wood, director of the National Centre for Writing Peggy Hughes, and Mills & Reeves Director of Operations and board member of the Norwich Financial Industry Group, Jodie Hosmer. Here's Peggy Hughes on the city's cultural capital.
Well, I mean, I think that, as we've said, Norwich is England's first UNESCO City of Literature. which is a badge that sort of recognises an amazing literary heritage, but also looks towards a really vibrant kind of current moment and infrastructure to support that. So I think something like that really is a draw for people. The kind of idea of being in a literary city is important to people. I think we've got that designation. In large part to do with something like the University of East Anglia's creative writing offer. I think that's a reason a lot of people will first have come to the city, although my understanding is, and maybe Tom you'll know more from Norwich University of the Arts perspective, but I think it's a city that really retains creative talent, it would seem to me. I think once people get here and they are writing, I think they can find a community. The National Centre for Writing, I mean, we're here partly because we felt it was really important to have a physical centre for writing and what that entailed. So we offer physical assets that people can use, writers' rooms, a venue space, a cottage. We've got a little podcast studio in there. We've got a community kitchen. So we're offering those sort of spaces where writers can come together and connect and learn.
Peggy Hughes. And then, the city many people will be waiting for, the Beginner's Guide to Cambridge. And for your teaser, who better to clip than the inimitable Harriet Fear, MBE.
I would say what makes it really special for me is its global impact. So, and this is proven with evidence, as you would expect from somebody who's the chair of Cambridge Ahead. Everything has to be evidence-based with us, not that I'm representing CA today particularly. But I think if you look back at the last 80 to 100 years, you can trace where Cambridge has made a globally significant difference to lives, not just here, but nationally and internationally, not least with, obviously, the discovery of DNA, just down the road, but also the fact that Cambridge, under Cambridge antibody technology, created at one point the biggest selling drug in the world in the form of Humira. So these are hugely significant opportunities that have come from what were challenges. So I think it's global impact and what Cambridge has done and continues to do for global society. Really was interested earlier this year to see that the Global Innovation Index put Cambridge as #1 in the world yet again for being the most intensive cluster in the world. So in other words, relatively small, but with huge impact.
Harriet Fear. I'm truly excited to share this one, which also features Paula Beckenstein of Connexon on networking, Donna Arderman of Mills & Reeve on founders and founding, Katie Davies of Cap Air Systems, the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Business Board, and the board of the Cambridgeshire Chamber of Commerce on advanced manufacturing, and community builder Ilka Akansel, sharing his experiences of entering the Cambridge ecosystem, following a very well-received talk he gave at Cambridge Wide Open Week. And I know exactly how well-received it was because I was in the audience listening. And Katie Davies will be pulling double duty on the Beginner's Guides, featuring as she will on our Peterborough edition, which will be recorded in the new year at ARU Peterborough itself. Alongside Katie will be Al Kingsley, MBE, Connor Butler of the Cambridgeshire Chamber of Commerce, and a representative of Anglia Ruskin University Peterborough, with more guests TBC. Then we'll be bringing you the lowdown on Ipswich, direct from the waterside home of the University of Suffolk, where I'm busy assembling some amazing guests just for you. Do we need to stop at 4? We do not. I'm looking at the following later on in 2026 with another block of 4 Beginner's Guides. Let me know what you think about the Beginner's Guides to King's Lynn, Bury St Edmunds, St Neots, and Newmarket. And that's not all for the Beginner's Guides. I'm planning to visit some very special guest cities who may be outside the east of England but are already huge partners for our region. So stand by for the Beginner's Guides to That's all you're going to get. Yes, there'll be no clues from me, none at all.
Oh mon Dieu.
Aha! Le Herring Rouge, n'est-ce pas? I'll be visiting the Babraham Research Campus in South Cambridgeshire and touring the Watatonga Wildlife Reserve in West Norfolk. I'll call in on Cambridge Science Centre and drop in on Christabel Wowie, Director of the John Innes Centre on Norwich Research Park. There's still much more to come, including coverage of Cambridge White Open Week, the Royal Norfolk Show, Cambridge Tech Week, and more events that will be announced, all in good time. There's also the small matter of Eastern Promise's 5th anniversary. Yes, in October, it will be 5 years since our very first episode. And hasn't time flown? We'll be marking the event in a manner yet to be determined. Woohoo! There's plenty of the year left to fill, and I'm particularly keen to hear more from Suffolk and other parts of the region as well. If you want to reach an audience of directors, researchers, academics, the C-suite, non-execs and senior level people across the region and beyond, don't forget I have listeners in Virginia and California, that's confirmed. Do drop me a line, again at podcast@easternpromise.org.uk. So from me, Mike Rigby, thank you for listening. Do have a very happy Christmas, and I look forward to having your company on January the 15th, 2026. So until then, bye for now. To hear other episodes of the Eastern Promise podcast, and to find out more about what we do, go to our website at easternpromise.org.uk. Eastern Promise is a Pudding Shed production in proud association with Mills & Reeve. Achieving more together.